Good afternoon, Nightmare Roadshow. This is SOS,
And Dirty Birdie here. Forgot my name.
and we are going to start a news segment where we talk about some of the strange, bizarre, wacky world news.
Yeah,
Yeah,
things like just the weird and bizarre that show up in the news.
yeah, and we're calling it Rowdy's Curiosity Chronicles. Rowdy being our Rowdy the raccoon mascot.
Yep.
Yeah, so Rowdy's bringing you these clips. So the first one we're gonna talk about today is called, it's um a Florida man was arrested after trying to cross the ocean in a homemade hamster wheel. And this was what, 2023.
hmm This is about a year ago.
And if you haven't seen this, you're going to have to Google this because this hamster wheel is bizarre. Um it it's made out of like barrels or some kind of it's really looks like a big hamster wheel. If you had never had a hamster, there's these wheels that you put them in and they run, and it's their exercise wheel, right? And it's like I'm looking at it's like orange balls.
They look like buoys.
They do kind of look like buoys, and he made this wheel, this contraption, and he wanted to basically run across the ocean in this thing. And, and so I was like dying when I was reading this. But anyway, he was arrested. He hadn't attended. He was going to go like 4,000 miles across from the Atlantic to London. But I guess the U.S. Coast Guard, there was a standoff with this guy. Now can't figure out why that's illegal. Like, why is it illegal to be a stupid idiot on the ocean?
I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know.
So he was arrested because the Coast Guard attempted to detain him, and it has something to do with the port authority or something like that. Like, I'm trying to let's see. The captain of the port gave him a violation. So the captain of the port where he was at, the captain of the port is like the end all be all for the port that you're docked in, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's like they're in charge of the port, who can dock, who can't, the whole 9 yards. And so the captain of the port had given him an order basically for some kind of federal obstruction because he wouldn't. It was a federal obstruction of a boarding and violation. That's what he got. And so I guess so. If you dock in a U.S. port, right, the U.S. authorities have the right to then board your vessel.
hmm
So there's inspections and everything that have to happen with customs and all this stuff. So he was like, "No, this is my hamster wheel. You're not coming on it."
It shouldn't even be classified as a ship. It's just,
Well, he was docked there, so I guess it's floating. It's now a vessel.
I suppose.
So anyway, he was in defiance of it, and he wouldn't let the U.S. Coast Guard. I mean, I don't know what they intended to inspect because it's basically a wire cage with buoys on the outside to make this thing. So if you ran inside it, it would just turn.
Yeah, you said you had paddles on the outside too.
Yeah. So there was like this 3-day standoff, and it says that, and this is an article that I found from, let's see, quite sure. I just saw this one floating around on Sky News, I guess. And he was also armed with two 12-inch knives, and he said that he was going to kill himself if they attempted to remove him from the vessel, which is why it took them 3 days. There was the standoff because they didn't want him to kill himself over this.
Yeah.
And then they considered I guess he had also there was a bomb threat involved. So the U.S. Coast Guard's like, they had to call in bomb disposal experts because they didn't know what was inside the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
The whole thing's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, crossing the ocean in a cage essentially is nuts as it is, but then
Yeah.
making threats like this, or
Yeah, they decided after a few days the bomb threat was a hoax, but still, you don't do that. There's just some
no.
boundary lines you don't cross. So they were finally able to move him from the vessel and transport him to the Coast Guard I guess he was in Miami, and he was surrendered and charged. And sadly, the hamster wheel
is probably broken up.
Yeah, it should be in a museum somewhere.
I say it should be in a museum. Like,
Because it's really bizarre. It's got yellow, like you said, buoys on the outside. It has like paddle fins. And then clearly he would crawl in the inside between the two sets of buoy and fins and then just it's his own body that's going to make this thing paddle. Here's the catch. The winds are pretty hellacious out at sea, and I don't think he would have any control over this thing.
no, and
And the waves and the current.
currents and all that. Yeah, he's in a floating crab cage. Like, he's bait for something.
They basically saved his life taking him off the vessel. I mean, that's honestly probably why they did it. They said, you can't do this. Because it's an unsafe voyage is what they consider. That's the criminal complaint, instead of it be an unsafe voyage. But then you look at how many people, remember when we had all of the people from Cuba coming over on the raft constantly?
Yep.
I mean, that's an unsafe voyage. They would have it so overweight and so many people clinging to the sides of those things trying to get away from communism.
Yeah.
And come in here.
I mean, they stitched everything together. It was pretty much homemade, and then they jumped in it.
But it wasn't in our port. It was coming to our port. So anyway, this guy, his name was Bellucci, and he called it the hydropod or a bubble. So anyway, if you see somebody running around in the ocean with a bubble, I don't know, wave and keep on going. But I thought that was a really interesting story. Yeah. And then our second news clip today is there was a potato chip factory in Hong Kong. So they're making potatoes chips, right? And they have this one potato that it won't process, like the machinery can't get it to slice and all that stuff. Pretty good thing, because it was a World War I hand grenade.
Yep.
And can you imagine? So it was really rusty. It was mud covered, and it was still a live grenade, and it was harvested along potatoes in France that were shipped to Hong Kong. So God knows. I mean, I wonder how many times stuff like that has happened.
I wouldn't know, but yeah, France still has munitions just laying around out in fields and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's one place that nobody goes to because it's so bad. It's so
dangerous to walk through it.
Well, all the mustard gas is there. They just munitions. They're like, this is a death trap. Nobody can go out there, and they fence it off. And I'm pretty sure they're still finding munitions out there.
Well, look at how much we find here. You might not, but so there was a bombing range right here in Pocatello. And we still find munitions on BLM and Forest Service lands all around here in state land. There's live munitions found, and we have a bomb squad.
Really?
Here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Actually, we find quite a bit. And then we have a bomb disposal crew here, and I think they're based out of Twin Falls, but they come over here and they take the ordnance and blow it up in a big tank.
I had no idea.
Yes.
That ordnance just laying.
We sure do. It's amazing what you find out here. So yeah, though it's crazy. But anyway, in this, they actually deemed the device in an unstable condition, and they evacuated the factory. And their Hong Kong police came in and they did a high pressure water firing technique, and so they were able to explode the ordnance it says in a sewer grate in an empty alley. But yeah, so you got these poor people working on a line in a potato chip factory, and there goes a grenade cooking by. Yeah, that's enough to freak you out.
Yeah, just have a little grenade just rattling around with the rest of the potatoes.
God. Can you imagine opening your bag? God dang it, this bag of potato chips is really heavy. All right, so the last story that we're going to talk about today is this one is kind of weird. So there was this 18th century love note that was sewn with human hair. And this thing is actually going to be displayed at a London museum. So it starts with this lady named Anna Maria Radcliffe, and she was embroidering a message with the hair of her husband, so she's taken his hair
And
she's
stitching it meant.
she's making an embroidery. And he was executed in 1716, and he had been rebelling against the King of England. So after his execution, she sat down, she's doing some embroidery, and for cloth, she used the bed sheet from his prison cell.
Wow.
Which is, how would she even get that? That's weird. You know?
I don't know. Maybe she just went in there and asked for it.
I don't know. And for thread, she used human hair, and they said it could have been his hair. So from his severed head. I that's just grisly. So and then somehow this cloth, this embroidery, which took a very long time to create, ended up at the Museum of London. So I guess they're looking at this, because embroidery thread is pretty thin, but still, they're looking at this. I wonder how they figured out it was made out of hair. Anyway, she was very much in love with her husband. She wanted to keep that memory alive. And so, in a little bit about her husband, he was the third Earl of Derwentwater, and he was executed February 24th, 1716, for his involvement in the Jacobite Rebellion of 1715. So he'd failed. The Jacobites had tried and failed to put the son of a Catholic king back on the throne. So a lot of those guys involved in that, men and women, I believe, they were beheaded.
Yep.
Yeah. So, anyway, a very sad story. And so she's trying to keep his memory alive. I thought that was crazy, but there was, following his execution at the age of 26, his heart was sent to an Augustinian convent, and Anna Maria was given his body with his head sewn back on.
Well, that was a nice of him.
God.
And back then there was no preserving or embalming or anything.
Yeah, so they're saying this would give her the opportunity to go ahead and remove his hair for the embroidery. I'm just, yeah. So embroidery was basically other decorations like flowers and leaves and a wreath in the shape of the heart and a love message. All of this with this thread. And it's really sad and really sweet at the same time, but
kind of
bizarre and creepy and everything all at once. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how could they tell it was hair and they just touch it and you're like, yeah, that's hair?
It must be, when I'm thinking about human hair, and then it's so much finer. It's so fine compared to even embroidery thread.
Mm-hmm.
That must be like when you were touching the garment or the sheet with the embroidery on it, feeling it.
Yeah. You can pretty much tell by just touching it that it's hair, but still, like, hey, what's this? Pop.
Anyway, I don't think they probably had the best of shampoo back then either, so. No. Anyway, well, that's the first news segment that we're going to do. We're going to do a whole series of them as we find these bizarre and creepy and entertaining and weird stories.
Yep.
Yeah. Hamster wheel weird.
Hamster wheel weird.
Anyway, thank you for listening in. We'll catch you next time.